changing. Among them is the tradition of storytelling. This is something that has been around since the dawn of the age of man. But have times advanced so much that storytelling cannot possibly survive? Most experts agree that storytelling is definitely not dead, but that it has changed significantly. Some experts disagree, however, whether it is just the platform that has changed, or if it is the way we tell stories has changed also. Some maintain that storytelling does not work in today's society. According to Drock, the problem with storytelling is in the word itself. The last thing our generation wants is to be told something. Drock argues that society is now infatuated with sharing, and that stories are moments or memories. They cannot be shared. This is a false idea. The very purpose of stories is that they be shared. The term storyteller can be defined as a relater of anecdotes or a reciter of tales, i.e., sharing stories. Drock goes on to argue that when used in advertising, storytelling doesn't have the same effect on us because the moral of the story is telling me I should buy or sell something. It probably won't be the same experience. They go on to say, I'll never share a commercial on social media. There are actually many advertisements that tell a story that is still able to affect viewers. Some ads even do this so well, they make international news. Take, for instance, a commercial company in Thailand, a communication company in Thailand, which tells a story of a boy who steals medicine for his sick mother. When caught by the store owner, a nearby restaurant owner pays for the medicine and and orders his daughter to get him some vegetable soup. This man then sends the thieving boy on his way. Years later, the same man has a medical emergency and the expenses that result from which are too much for the man's family to pay. The surgeon assigned to the case happens to be the thief from so many years before. He pays off the kind man's expenses in return. This ad was shared around the world on Facebook and news productions. It clearly had a huge impact on viewers, suggesting that Drock may have been mistaken. Perhaps the most significant piece of evidence that storytelling has not died in the digital age is the fact that the number of storytellers has been increasing. Jim Woodard states, since the early 70s, there's been a steady increase in the number of professional and semi-professional storytellers. The number of storytelling associations or leagues has been increasing. This seems to be in direct opposition of what Drock says that oral stories will not hold people's attention. Woodard also mentions that festivals surrounding the age-old art of storytelling is also increasing in frequency. Similar to these festivals is a program entitled The Moth. The Moth is an acclaimed not-for-profit organization dedicated to the art and craft of storytelling. This program began in 1997. Stories are presented live to a standing audience. The person telling the tale does not use any notes during the performance. The Moth goes across the globe, sharing thousands of stories to all those who hear. Audiences are drawn to the stories like moths to a flame. This is just one example of how storytelling is still alive and well in the digital age. Also, all around the world, stories are being utilized more than ever. In New York, storytelling is being used to help people get over their sorrows. Toastmasters International, known for organizing speakers with outstanding speeches, has just made an advanced program dedicated to telling stories. Many teachers are now using stories to improve language skills in the classroom. Woodard even goes so far as to define a role for storytellers in society today, saying, we need to clearly establish where we are going and who we are. It is clear that with the position of storyteller becoming more popular and a role for them in society easily demonstrated, that storytelling cannot be dead, and it is in fact thriving despite our digital age. Or is it thriving because of it? Woodard hypothesizes that as technology grows to advance in the new millennium, we will see storytelling revival continue to grow. Many experts expand on this field, suggesting the platform through which stories are being told has changed. One expert who argues this is Lallo. Long ago, stories were told strictly through word of mouth. Lallo explains that the written word allowed stories to be told to a wider and wider audience. Unlike the moth, stories that are written do not have to be told loud. Written stories can traverse time and space, reaching people in other lands and in the future. New technologies being utilized by online newsrooms allow for stories to be presented with photos. This is a new platform which results in even more people being able to access stories that they are instantly sent to people's computers, tablets, and smartphones. People are now reading much of their news online. Dr. Marci suggests that this may be because people are becoming more comfortable interacting with media, even than they are interacting with each other. This implies stories are being told through a digital platform are reaching more people than stories given orally. His claim that there will always be platforms for storytelling is backed up by Woodard's findings that storytelling is actually on the rise and will likely continue. Marci expounds on this idea, stating that with so many platforms, we will always have multiple digital options to satisfy our needs, and that new digital platforms are emerging every day. Lallo would agree that the storytelling platform has changed digitally and has, as Marci suggests, multiplied. First, stories were just told through the written word. Now they can be told through apps, video games, and media channels. After the song Blank Space by Taylor Swift came out, an app was released which extended the story. Storytelling is also carried out through video games, most of which have a storyline and a plot, including a beginning, middle, and end. Some are even extended into sequels, such as the Resident Evil games. The use of media channels, such as YouTube, allows viewers to become producers and directors of their own experiences. These days, everyone can be their own media channel. Lance Wheeler also acknowledges the normative audience is using new technologies to become their own storytellers. Expanding on how people are their own storytellers in the digital age, it is now possible for people to extend beloved stories they have read, heard, or seen with even more stories. Indeed, this is the shadowy digital parallel universe that is fan fiction. These stories of stories have actually been able to reach a wider audience than books by many professional best-selling authors. While the concept of fan fiction has been around for centuries, digital advantages of today allow for a far-reaching audience. There are many websites dedicated to fan fiction which support this claim. Fanfiction.net had close to 600,000 pieces of Harry Potter fan fiction and 200,000 based on Twilight just 3 years ago. Fanfiction is the largest growing genre on Wattpad. These are real-life examples that show how the digital age has only increased storytelling. It is far from dead, as Drock claims. It may be that some people feel storytelling is dead because of how it is used in the market for advertising today. Drock claims that storytelling does not have the same effect on us when companies try to use it. According to Marci, brands have mere seconds to make their cases for consumption. This would make one think that storytelling cannot possibly be used in advertising. How can a story be told in only a few seconds? The answer is with digital technologies. Stories are no longer forced into being presented linearly. There no longer has to be a beginning, middle, and end to every single story. Companies can take advantage of those new platforms coming out every day to effectively integrate audiences in a way that amplifies and sustains emotional engagement, as Marci puts it. Drock agrees, saying that everything is visual. Have a story? Stop telling, start showing. It is here that they seem to contradict what they have been saying all throughout their article. Wait, what did you say? Michael de Monte offers some clarification on this discrepancy. The linear model of storytelling that most people are accustomed to is almost unrecognizable in the social era. As explained earlier by Lallo, new platforms have changed how stories are told. Monte agrees that the tools of storytelling have changed, but the basic structure has not. That is not to say that the organization of stories remains unchanged, only that the core elements have not. Monte goes on to say that advertising will be successful when companies utilize storytelling. Lallo supports this. He says that storytelling is now a communication tool used to tell the journey of a brand's change, vision, and value. A great example of this is the Duracell teddy bear commercial. In this advertisement for batteries, an army dad overseas sends his little girl a teddy bear powered by Duracell batteries to play a recorded message. Those same batteries last as the little girl grows up until her dad finally comes home. This commercial is attempting to communicate to viewers Duracell's value and dependence through a story. Vance Wheeler points out that storytelling in advertising has even changed in the digital age. He states that with the emergence of technology, the notion of formats, running times, and platforms established over 100 years ago are being challenged. So Wheeler agrees with Marci that the format of stories has changed, and with Lallo that the platforms are now different. The difference is that Wheeler adds that the length of stories being told has also changed. In fact, they have shortened considerably. A story that could be told in a theater play that would take at least 2 hours can now be told in a commercial in under 2 minutes. In this way, technology will change the way that stories are told. Take, for instance, the Columbia University Digital Storytelling Lab. Here, students have the opportunity to try out new storytelling methods. One result of the lab is a project called Sherlock Holmes and the Internet of Things. This is a story world that plays out globally through a series of connected devices. This is just another platform of storytelling that could be used for marketing. Many experts assert that the digital age has had a huge impact on newsrooms. Ed Lallo mentions that online newsrooms allow stories to be told with eye-catching photos and high-definition videos. He states the importance that information from online newsrooms could be obtained instantly by viewers using tablets and cell phones. Monte points out why Lallo may be placing importance on instant information delivery. He says that consumers insist on receiving information in real time as narratives unfold, but are also hungry for the context and perspective that comes with authoritative, long-form journalism. This puts enormous pressure on those in the news industry. Monte asserts, however, that the solution to this paradox is simple. Just tell the story. Since this works, it is clear that people still want to hear, read, and look at stories. For this reason, stories will keep being produced. This is yet more evidence that storytelling is far from dead. It has now basically been established that storytelling has not died in the digital age. But what does the future hold for this age-old practice? Most likely, the future will see even more platforms, methods, and instances of storytelling. Video games are one platform which will likely continue to grow as a storytelling venue in the future. Adrian Rapazzini presents a video game called Elegy for a Dead World, in which text scrolls along the bottom of the screen describing the scene. However, some of the text is missing, and it is up to the player to fill in the blanks. The game explores 3 distant worlds inspired by the work of Romantic poets Percy Shelley, John Keats, and Lord Byron. The game also allows players to share their stories with others and read stories other players have written. This type of interactivity will be a sizable part of the future of storytelling, according to both Rapazzini and Sarah Wanenchak. According to her, role-playing games can be understood as communally constructed narratives. Role-playing games have been on the rise in the past few decades. They're quickly becoming a large portion of digital stories. LiveJournal and Dreamwidth are just 2 online role-playing games that allow players to create journals for characters from various media and thread those characters interacting with each other and working collectively to construct a larger storyline. The key point here is that how stories are being made has changed, and where stories are found has changed. Many of the other experts mentioned in this document are in line with this thinking. The fact that new mediums are being used to tell stories just shows how important storytelling is to humanity. Margaret Rhodes is yet another expert who agrees that storytelling will be immensely interactive in the future. She mentions an exhibit in New short called Sensory Stories, in which all the micro-exhibits tell stories that one can interact with. Some of the things included were a game that releases a smell and a giant cube with a funnel pit inside. These stories get experienced exponentially rather than linearly, according to Rose. Technology has allowed for exhibits like this to exist, interactive and multi-sensory. Compiling the evidence from all the gathered experts, it is clear to see that most agree that storytelling has not died. In fact, it is thriving. Technology is in fact facilitating storytelling on different platforms and in different ways. There is a wide opportunity for storytelling